Well, in many ways, I've been preparing for the last 30 some odd days by traveling across the state and listening to Nebraskans, literally thousands of Nebraskans, rural, urban, small groups, large groups. As you may have heard, there have been approximately 12 public sessions, but there have been hundreds of one-on-one meetings. I've met personally with every member of the Board of Regents. I've met with all the student governments, faculty senate heads, and so many others, to just listen to them, not to campaign, but to the contrary, to understand what they believe their needs are, as to where the university is serving them well, and also where we could possibly do better. And what I plan to do over this time is, first of all, take a deep breath after today, and then continue doing that.
Do you have any
And listening to you folks as well.
Do you have any unfinished business at UNMC you're hoping to wrap up here in the next few months?
You know, there are so many things going on at the Med Center on a daily basis. I will never get to the bottom of the to-do list. I promise you that. But that is one of the big opportunities that I have as the president, will have as the president, which will be to continue to bring forward the priorities and the strategies of all of our campuses, of course, including the Med Center, but looking very carefully at what we need to do here in Lincoln, in Kearney, and of course at UNO, which I know extremely well. You know, I've been introduced up front and personal to the INR rural programs in Kasner, and that's going to be critically important as well. And particularly, you know, it's so interesting as I've traveled across the state, and as you know, I've heard the same thing for 10 years. Every time I go to small communities, large communities, well-served communities, underserved communities, I always start off by saying, if there are three things the university could do better for you, what could we do? And the answer is always the same: workforce, and more work. And by the way, Jeff, if you're not listening, it's work. It's all different kinds of workforce. It's engineers, it's architects, it's attorneys, doctors, pharmacists, nurses, you know, fill in the blank. And so that need is desperate across the state. And the University of Nebraska is uniquely well positioned to do that, to not only educate Nebraskans, frankly, you know, as I've said in many of my public forums, one of my aspirational goals is for every high school student in the United States to have at least one night where they get up at 4 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat and say, if I can only go to college in Nebraska. And that's the goal.
You mentioned you met with all the regents. Regent Wilmot will not vote for you. I don't know if you were aware of that. Did your discussion with her give you any indication of why that would be?
It did not. I mean, she was extremely supportive, and we talked about things that are important to her. And I committed to her the same thing I did to the other regents, all of the regents, student regents and elected regents, excuse me, which is to listen carefully and to be as supportive as I could possibly be. So no, I don't have any insight into that at all.
Do you plan to meet with her at all and discuss that with her? Whether there's
I plan to meet with all of the regents.
What do you have to say? I guess maybe those people that you represent in Western Nebraska, maybe, about, I guess, what do you intend to do for, just the Western Nebraska people that might have concerns that maybe the university isn't fulfilling what they want?
Well, again, it just comes back to listening to them and understanding how the university can better serve their communities. And there are unquestionably areas that we can and should do better. There are many areas that we have tremendous strength out in rural Nebraska. But until I understand from her and what her constituents may have concerns over, it's very difficult to address something until you can get it laid out and with a clear understanding, and then develop a strategy to address it. You know, I would say the overwhelming majority of all of the commentary that I received, and I understand that maybe people with concerns that would choose not to write to me directly, but voice their concerns in a different way, but they've almost all been very positive and understanding and enthusiastic. You know, I've met with the Farm Bureau, I've met with the cattlemen, I've met with the Nebraska beef. I've met with just a large number of the farming and ranching communities of the state, and they've written back to me with extremely enthusiastic support, but also, frankly, very clear that there are opportunities that the university can do more to support rural Nebraska. But I think until we collectively understand that, it's very difficult to say how we would want to address it.
Jeff, you're 71. I mean, how many years do you think you have in you for this job?
Well, the good news is, as we would say in the medical world, I'm a good 71. That is to say, I not only feel well, but take no meds, exercise almost every day, except when I'm traveling, and really love what I get to do every day. I have a wonderful family, and really feel very enthusiastic and very energetic. So the understanding that I have with the board that as long as I can continue to be productive, have an impact, and for me personally and for my family, continue to find joy in what I do every day, which I do now. You know, I'll tell you, in 10 years, I really haven't had a day that I haven't looked forward to getting out of bed in the morning, and I haven't had a day that I pulled out the covers at night and said, wow, what an incredible experience. And as long as that continues to be the mantra, you can have as many years as you'd want. I'm one of these people who I'm sure will fail retirement at least once.
Because when the Regents started the search, they said, speaking of 10 years, they said they were hoping to find someone who would stay 10 years or more. Could you see yourself here 10 years or more?
Absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt.
You talked about building a team. I guess, what are you looking for in the people that you want to surround yourself with here at Varner Hall?
Well, of course, knowledge and skill and experience. But what I'm looking for more than anything else is leadership. And that comes down to the way I personally define leadership, and that is that magical combination of knowledge and skill that inspires others to do great things. You know, our job, the job of any leader, is to bring out the best in other people, to bring out the best in other organizations or part of our organization, to build partnerships, and to really inspire the future. And, you know, none of us here today really can predict what higher education will look like in a decade. And so I'm really excited about the possibility of trying to define that future for public higher education right here in Nebraska, because all the tools are in our tool chest. All we need to do is assemble them, create a future vision, and then not force, require, cajole, but inspire others to want to be part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the topic of leadership, Jeff, if you're going to be on the search for a new UNMC chancellor, or on the search for UNK chancellor, are you still looking for similar traits in those next chancellors as well?
Absolutely. You know, I've been doing so much recruiting over my career of deans and directors and vice chancellors. I've sat on countless search committees. I've been searched for myself any number, and I'll tell you that, you know, you can look at a curriculum vitae that's inches thick, but until you can really assess the leadership potential of an individual and understand how they define leadership and whether their definition of leadership jives with where I think we need to be. There are just humanistic characteristics of leadership, and, you know, among them, frankly, to me, is the quality to listen to other people. You know, what I call intentional listening. You know, because very frequently, even if you deal with some negative stakeholders, what they really want at the end of the day is they want to be heard, they want to be listened to, and they want to know that their voices matter. And that's a really, really important characteristic.
You mentioned workforce is something you've heard a lot when you're talking with others. How are you viewing kind of the future of the university's direction with balancing workforce and like liberal arts education?
When I say workforce, I mean all of the workforce. And liberal arts education is really important. You know, as one of our attendees at one of our rural Nebraska events just earlier this week said, our job is to teach our students how to think. Not what to think, but how to think. And that includes a broad-based educational program, which includes the humanities, the social sciences, and so much more. And by the way, in addition to that, that educational process is not purely what happens in the classroom and in the teaching laboratory, there's a lot of maturation and learning that happens outside of the classroom for those of us that can remember back to our college days. And I want to be sure that those experiences are fulfilling as well.